can we receive any inspiration from seeing ourselves in the mirror of efficacious speech? Um, I propose to attempt in some way to give candor to some very pertinent words in Agamben in connection to recent subject matter that we've been dealing with in the YouTube recordings. So Agamben is saying here, it is only because Neoplatonic Hermetic mysticism has bridged the Aristotelian separation between nous and suke and the Platonic difference between the one and the many with an emanationist system in which a continuous hierarchy of intelligences, angels, demons, and souls, in parentheses, think of the angel intelligences of Avicenna and Dante, and parentheses, communicated in inverted commas, great chain, which begins and ends with the, in capital letters, one, 10. Was it possible to establish a single subject as the basis for, in inverted commas, experimental science? So, what was the subject? So we're talking about the human being, and we're talking about something roughly analogous to this phrase Leo Strauss uses, man as man. He uses that in connection to Plato. Man as man means there's a permanent subject matter of research, and so we can ask, what are human beings like? We don't specify here for biological science, for causality in terms of breeding and bloodlines, but simply man as man. We're not sure if we're talking about culture, nature, nurture. We don't know what we're talking about exactly, but basically we could find that out easily by reading some of the Socratic Platonic dialogues and see what they're talking about. So for instance, they talk about things like dike or justice, about what the polis is like, and so on. But what is that like before it gets to Plato? What is man as man before it gets to Plato? This permanent subject matter of research. So this connects felicitously with my theory that Agamemnon in Homer, prior to Vico getting his hands on the issue in the 18th century, was a figure of man as man, or what corresponds to that in Plato. So again, Agamben says here, it is this difference which the chorus in Aeschylus or Asteia underlines, characterizing human knowledge, against Agamemnon's hubris, as in Pathemathos, what is learned only through and after suffering, and excludes any possibility of foresight, that is, of knowing anything whatsoever with certainty. So Agamemnon has offended the priest because he wanted to keep as his prize some certain beautiful woman that was captured in battle, and he didn't want to give it back to a priest who was linked up to a powerful god, and then this caused all kinds of havoc with the Greeks. So what does that mean? It means even the figure that stands in for the best man, so in the Christian period that would be Christ become a man, but in the archaic period that's Agamemnon. So even the best man has to undergo experiences and learn from experience. Whereas what they're saying is through the Platonic Hermetic thinking, what we get is this figure of a instead of Agamemnon, instead of Christ, instead of man as man, we have a blank figure of a subject which is capable of perfect knowledge, which doesn't have to come through experience in the sense of an individual who doesn't know what they're doing, making mistakes and then repenting for the mistakes, such as Cain repented for his mistake of killing Abel, and then said, in one version of the account, not saying sardonically and nastily, am I my brother's keeper? Rather, he said, I didn't know. He didn't say, rather, he said, I didn't know, am I my brother's keeper? Meaning, I've just awoken to the fact that I am my brother's keeper. so that through the experience of killing his brother, he learns that there's such a thing as guilt, and that that man is supposed to be the shepherd of man. So whereas the quote I read, the first one, it suggests that we're already in the place to gain knowledge. We don't have to go through experience. We can gain knowledge directly. So this is difficult to clarify what's going on here, and this is the work that Agamben is trying to work out. So like, it seems like modern science is about experience in some sense, because it's about experiment, but every experiment has to be prefigured and advanced with hypotheses, right? With through rigorous standards by which we would then say, what are the results of the experiment. I think this is also clarified by saying that in modern science, what is sort of covered up is that subjectivity and objectivity are ultimately the same thing. In other words, you run an experiment, that's an ordinary human being standing there having a subjective experiment, but then you just try to get the content which is most agreeable between subjects. So if everyone says, this is what I saw, and they report it this way, and they have a certain rigorous standard for reporting what they observed, then you call that objective. But it means there's always a connection between the individual human being and what the group of competent practitioners aver, let's say we have observed this. That those two things taken together, the